Camouflage, until the sound of helicopter blades silenced the entire school. Before that jaw-dropping moment, everyone at Lincoln High had to face a harsh lesson. Never judge someone by their appearance. The uniform hung loosely on 16-year-old Kevin Washington, 2 sizes too big, yet he wore it with a calm pride that made the laughter around him sound small. The rolled-up sleeves revealed thin arms, trembling not from fear, but from the effort to stay composed. "Look, it's Budget G.I. Joe!" shouted Tyler Morrison, the quarterback who measured confidence in cruelty. Surrounded by his pack of followers, he strutted through the hallway, each joke louder than the last. "Hey, rookie, Halloween's over!" Kevin didn't react. His footsteps echoed differently, steady, deliberate. Not the steps of a nervous teenager, but of someone trained to respect order, not popularity. That morning had begun like any other, since Kevin had transferred 3 months earlier. His mother, a nurse at the military hospital, had moved him here after his father was sent on a classified mission overseas. What no one at Lincoln High knew, and what Kevin never talked about, was that today marked exactly 1 year since he'd last heard his father's voice. Then came Ashley Bennett, queen of gossip and sarcasm. "You do realize this is a school, not a war zone, right?" she said, smirking. "Or do you just like pretending you're somebody important?" Kevin stopped at his locker, turned the dial with quiet precision, and opened the door. Inside was a photo. A man in uniform, chest full of medals, standing proudly beside a younger Kevin. The picture was taped where only he could see it. He didn't need to explain who he was. Soon everyone would find out. They thought Kevin's silence meant weakness. In truth, it was strategy. "A secret weapon," his father used to say, "is most powerful when no one knows you have it." Maybe he's getting ready for World War III. Cameron Davis, the class clown, laughed loud enough for everyone to hear. Or maybe he just misses his soldier dad who's never coming home. The laughter spread like wildfire. For a brief second, Kevin closed his eyes and tightened his fists. But when he opened them again, his gaze had changed. It wasn't the look of a broken kid. It was calm, focused, dangerous. "Keep laughing," he whispered under his breath, too quiet for anyone else to hear. "Keep laughing while you can." What none of them realized was that Kevin remembered every word, every smirk, every cruel joke, storing them away like pieces on a battlefield. He had learned from his father that the greatest strategy isn't to strike when your enemy expects it, but when they've convinced themselves you never will. If stories about courage and redemption move you, don't forget to subscribe and follow this channel, because what happens next will change everything at Lincoln High forever. That day, Kevin stood in the middle of the hallway surrounded by mocking faces, but he didn't flinch. He looked like someone protecting a secret far too powerful to reveal before the right moment, because sometimes true justice doesn't come from your own hands. It descends from the sky in a storm of wind and thunder. The cruelty escalated during recess. Tyler Morrison decided that words weren't enough anymore. He needed a crowd. He needed to destroy Kevin in front of everyone. "Hey everyone, watch this!" Tyler shouted, jumping onto a picnic table. "Our little soldier's gonna show us some army moves. Come on, Kevin, give us a push-up." Phones shot up in the air, recording. The courtyard buzzed with cruel excitement. Dozens of screens waited to capture what they thought would be another viral humiliation. But what they were about to witness would silence the entire school. The crowd closed in like spectators at a modern-day coliseum, hungry for humiliation instead of blood. Ashley Bennett stood at the front, phone in hand, her lips curling into a satisfied smile. She could already picture the flood of likes and comments her post would bring. Kevin didn't move. He stood tall, eyes fixed on the horizon, posture perfect, calm in the chaos. Every breath was steady, every blink measured. It wasn't the stillness of fear, it was discipline. To anyone paying attention, there was something almost unsettling about that quiet control. The kind you only see in people who face storms far greater than teenage cruelty. "What's the matter, soldier boy?" Cameron Davis sneered, circling closer. "You waiting for orders from your imaginary commander? I bet your dad's not even in the army. Probably just some mall guard pretending he's important." That line, the one about his father, hit the air like a spark in dry grass. But instead of flaring up, Kevin did something no one expected. He smiled. Barely. Just a flicker at the corner of his mouth. So subtle most missed it. But that smile carried something dangerous. It was the kind of smile you see from someone who knows more than they're saying. Because what those kids didn't know was simple. Kevin Washington had grown up on military bases across the world. While they played video games, he learned Morse code from real soldiers. While they grumbled about chores, he folded uniforms with military precision at 7 years old. While they were busy pretending, Kevin was learning what real courage looked like. Tyler Morrison jumped down from the picnic table, swaggering toward him. "Here's a free tip, soldier," he said, his grin cruel. "This isn't your place. Why don't you go back to where you got that costume?" The word costume hit the courtyard like a slap. Laughter followed. Loud, forced, uneasy. But a few students started to notice something strange. Kevin wasn't backing away. He wasn't looking down. His eyes were focused, calculating. He wasn't reacting like a victim. He was analyzing the situation, because that's exactly what he'd been trained to do. In his 17 years, Kevin had seen his father diffuse conflicts without raising his voice, stand tall under real pressure, and remind him of one rule. The strongest person in the room is the one who doesn't need to prove it. And in that moment, Kevin was about to prove just how true that was. The first lesson Kevin ever learned from his father was simple. Never react. Observe, process, plan, execute. And that was exactly what he was doing. As the crowd jeered, Kevin's phone buzzed quietly in his pocket. A single vibration, invisible to everyone else. He glanced at the screen for less than a second, but it was enough. His expression changed. His eyes sharpened with purpose. It was the message he had been waiting for. The confirmation that would turn this entire moment of mockery into something unforgettable. He took one step forward. His voice, calm but commanding, sliced through the laughter like a blade. "Tyler," he said evenly, "are you sure you want to keep this up? Because I promise you, you're going to remember this day for the rest of your life." The courtyard froze. There was something in Kevin's tone, an authority that didn't belong to a teenager being bullied. It sounded trained, controlled. For the first time, Tyler hesitated. A chill crawled up his spine. But pride spoke louder than reason. "Oh, I'm terrified," Tyler said, forcing a laugh. "What are you going to do? Call your daddy? Oh, wait. That's right. He's never around. Real soldiers don't babysit failures." A few kids snickered. Most just watched. Kevin closed his eyes, not in anger, but in something almost like pity. When he opened them again, there was a calmness there that felt unnatural. "Tyler," he said softly, "my father's closer than you think. In fact, he's closer than anyone at this school could ever imagine." Ashley, the girl behind the camera, lowered her phone slightly. Something in the air had changed. The laughter died down. The noise of the courtyard faded into uneasy silence. Kevin wasn't the target anymore. He was the one in control. Then, "Ring!" The bell sounded, signaling the end of recess. Students started drifting away, whispering, confused, their curiosity pulling them back for one last glance. Kevin turned and walked toward the school building, calm, steady, and silent. Each footstep echoed with precision, like a march only he could hear. And though the courtyard emptied, one thought hung in the air like thunder waiting to break. Something was coming. But now there was something new in Kevin's demeanor. A quiet anticipation, like he was counting down the seconds to an invisible clock only he could hear. Then another soft vibration in his pocket. A message. 5 simple words that made his pulse quicken. Operation approved. Arrival confirmed. Tomorrow. Tyler and his crew laughed their way out of the courtyard, certain they had won, certain they had humiliated him into silence. What they didn't realize was that they had just triggered something far bigger than teenage pride. Within 24 hours, everything they thought they knew about power, privilege, and respect would crumble, and Lincoln High would never be the same again. Every insult, every shove, every cruel word had only forged something stronger inside Kevin. A quiet resilience built from pain, discipline, and purpose. Each moment of humiliation wasn't breaking him. It was sharpening him. And unknowingly, his tormentors were writing the story of their own downfall, one line at a time. The next morning, Kevin arrived an hour before anyone else. The parking lot was empty, still wrapped in mist. His footsteps echoed sharply, precise, measured, military. He walked straight to the front office. There was no hesitation now, no trace of yesterday's restraint. The air around him seemed to hum with a restrained energy, like a storm about to break. "Can I help you, dear?" asked Mrs. Rodriguez, the school secretary, glancing up from her desk. She barely recognized him, the quiet boy who never caused trouble. "Yes," Kevin said calmly. "I need to speak with Principal Peterson. It's about today's event." He placed a sealed envelope on the counter, his tone carrying a quiet authority far beyond his years. Mrs. Rodriguez frowned. "Event? There's nothing on the schedule for today." But when she opened the envelope and began to read, her expression changed instantly. Her hands trembled. "Oh my goodness! Is this real?" she whispered. Kevin gave a small, knowing smile. "Very real. And it starts at 2 o'clock sharp," he said. "I'd recommend getting the gym's sound system ready and clearing the football field." Mrs. Rodriguez shot up from her chair, rushing to find the principal. Kevin turned and began walking down the empty hallway, slow, steady, unshaken. The rhythm of his steps matched the same military cadence he had grown up hearing every morning of his life. And with each echoing step, one thought pulsed through his mind. By this afternoon, everyone will understand. Each step echoed like a countdown. Each breath measured, precise, like a soldier preparing for a decisive mission. What no one at Lincoln High knew was that Kevin hadn't just endured 3 months of humiliation. He documented every second of it, every cruel remark, every insult about his father, every smirk and shove and whisper in the hallway, all carefully recorded. Not for revenge, but for proof, for something far bigger than anyone could imagine. 20 minutes later, Tyler Morrison's truck roared into the parking lot like a battle cry. He stepped out, full of swagger, tossing his keys and grinning as if the world revolved around him. When he spotted Kevin standing by his locker, calm and collected, he smirked. But there was something different in the air that morning. Whispers in the halls, teachers moving faster than usual, tension building like a storm. "Hey, little soldier," Tyler sneered. "Sleep with your military teddy bear last night?" Kevin turned slowly, locking eyes with him. The intensity in his stare made Tyler hesitate, just for a heartbeat. "Are you absolutely sure you want to go through with this?" Kevin asked quietly. "Because after 2 o'clock, there's no turning back." Ashley Bennett and Cameron Davis approached, sensing the tension like sharks to blood. Ashley already had her phone out, ready to capture what she thought would be another viral laugh. "Dude, what's this about?" Cameron joked nervously. "You gonna call your dad's army to save you?" At the mention of his father, Kevin closed his eyes, not out of pain, but something that looked almost like anticipation. When he opened them again, his calm was unsettling. It wasn't the calm of surrender, it was the calm before something unstoppable. "You'll find out in a few hours," he said softly, shutting his locker with a sharp metallic click. "And when you do, remember this moment. Remember every word, every laugh, every time you thought cruelty made you powerful." The bell rang, but for the first time in months, Kevin didn't move toward class. He turned instead toward the gym. Waiting inside was Principal Peterson, pale, uneasy, and holding a folder that confirmed everything Kevin had told him that morning. The air between them buzzed with quiet disbelief. "Kevin, I didn't know," Principal Peterson stammered, clutching the papers Mrs. Rodriguez had handed him. His hands trembled as he scanned the official seal. "None of us did. This will change everything. The entire school." Kevin nodded calmly. "It's meant to. My father always said the best strategy isn't to strike when they expect it, but when they feel most secure in their superiority." Principal Peterson stared at him, speechless. Kevin's tone wasn't angry. It was steady, inevitable. By mid-morning, whispers filled the hallways like a rising tide. Teachers spoke in hushed tones. Meetings were canceled. Something was happening, something big. Tyler and his crew tried to corner Kevin for answers, but he only smiled, that same calm, unreadable smile that had started to unsettle everyone. "Something weird is going on," Ashley Bennett whispered to her friend Brittany during lunch. "The teachers are acting like something huge is about to happen. And that kid Kevin, he's different today." "Different how?" Brittany asked, half laughing, half nervous. Ashley frowned. "He's not scared anymore. He looks like he's waiting for something." Across the cafeteria, Kevin sat alone, his lunch untouched. Every few minutes, his gaze drifted to the clock. 1 hour, 15 minutes. His hand brushed the phone in his pocket. The newest message glowed on the screen. "ETA confirmed. Alpha team in position." Kevin's pulse quickened. The plan was in motion. What no one at Lincoln High yet understood was that Kevin Washington wasn't just any student, and his father wasn't just some guy in the military. Colonel James Washington was the decorated commander of the 3rd Airborne Division, a veteran of 3 international missions, and one of the most respected officers in the United States Armed Forces, and after 3 years of classified operations around the world, he was coming home, not quietly, not discreetly, but in a way no one at Lincoln High would ever forget. A moment that would teach every single person who mocked his son what respect truly meant. Kevin finished his sandwich, stood, and walked toward the football field. The sun was high. The air seemed to hold its breath. Then faintly and from the distance, he heard it, a deep rhythmic thunder rolling across the sky, the unmistakable sound of helicopter blades cutting through the wind. Kevin stopped at the edge of the field, his eyes lifted toward the horizon, where the sound grew louder, closer, stronger. And for the first time, a smile of pure pride crossed his face, because he knew, within moments, the entire school would finally see who he truly was. It happened right when the laughter was at its loudest. Something began to shift, not just in the clear blue sky above Lincoln High, but in Kevin's eyes. The quiet determination in his gaze burned brighter now, steady and unshakable, as if he knew the world was about to change. At exactly 2 p.m., the first sound came, faint, distant, almost like a whisper. Students looked up, squinting into the sunlight, and then within seconds that whisper became a roar. A thunderous vibration rolled across the campus, shaking the glass in every window. Tyler Morrison, mid-sentence in yet another cruel performance, laughed and pointed toward Kevin. "Look, everyone, our little soldier's waiting for Daddy to come home. I bet he's not even—" He never finished, because that's when the shadow fell over them. A massive silhouette swept across the courtyard, the unmistakable form of a Black Hawk UH-60 cutting through the sky like a blade. Its twin turbines screamed power, creating a wind so fierce it sent backpacks tumbling and hair whipping in every direction. The helicopter's matte green surface gleamed under the sun, the insignia of the 3rd Airborne Division blazing proudly on its side. Students stumbled backward, shielding their faces from the storm of dust and wind. Ashley Bennett's phone slipped from her hands, shattering on the concrete. Her eyes stayed locked on the aircraft, wide with disbelief. This can't be happening," she whispered, her voice nearly lost to the roar. Kevin didn't move. He stood tall, no longer the quiet boy mocked for his uniform, but a young man standing at attention, posture perfect, calm as steel. Every step, every insult, every cruel laugh had led to this. As the Black Hawk descended, its landing was flawless, precise, deliberate, and powerful. The wheels kissed the 50-yard line of the football field, right at the center of the school's pride. Before the turbines even began to slow, the side door slid open. And then he appeared. Colonel James Washington, 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in full uniform that gleamed with medals earned across 3 decades of service. Every movement radiated command, the posture of a man who had led soldiers through storms and deserts, a man who had faced chaos and never flinched. The crowd went silent. No laughter, no whispers, only the echoing beat of the helicopter fading into the air. And at the edge of the field, Kevin Washington, the boy they once mocked, lifted his hand in a perfect salute. His father returned it. The colonel's green beret was tilted at the perfect military angle, and when his eyes swept across the sea of stunned faces, The air itself seemed to tighten. This was a man who had led troops through real battles, and his presence left no room for arrogance or noise. "Oh my God," Cameron Davis whispered, his voice trembling. That's really his dad." Behind Colonel Washington, 3 officers stepped out of the Black Hawk, their uniforms crisp, medals gleaming in the sun. They marched in perfect formation toward the center of the football field, where Kevin stood waiting. No longer a victim, but a soldier in his own right. Principal Peterson came running down the sideline, papers flying, trying to make sense of what was unfolding before his eyes. An unannounced ceremony that would forever rewrite the legacy of Lincoln High. Tyler Morrison's mouth went dry, his confidence, his jokes, his fake bravado, all gone. Every insult, every cruel word replayed in his mind like a sentence he had just written for himself. He had mocked the son of one of the most decorated officers in the country, and now the entire world could see it. Then came the voice that silenced everything. "Attention!" Colonel Washington's command sliced through the air like a blade. The courtyard froze. Students, teachers, staff, all stood motionless. Even the wind seemed to stop. The colonel's presence didn't demand respect. It commanded it. Kevin stepped forward, his movements precise, posture straight, chin lifted, steps measured. When he reached his father, he stopped exactly 3 feet away and raised his right hand in a flawless salute. "Colonel Washington," Kevin said clearly, his voice strong enough to echo across the field. "Requesting permission to report. Mission accomplished." Colonel Washington's eyes softened. Pride shone through the disciplined exterior as he returned the salute. "Permission granted, Private Washington. Present your report." Kevin turned slowly to face the silent crowd, the same classmates who had laughed at him, mocked him, and whispered behind his back. But now none of them could meet his gaze. When he spoke, his tone was calm, firm, steady, but weighted with dignity. "Over the past 90 days, Kevin began, I have conducted a social reconnaissance operation within this institution. I have documented multiple cases of racial discrimination, harassment, and systemic bullying." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Kevin reached into his pocket and pulled out a sealed envelope, the same one Mrs. Rodriguez had seen that morning, the one stamped with an official military insignia. He held it up. "All evidence has been verified and submitted to the proper authorities." The courtyard was dead silent. Even Tyler's breathing felt too loud. Kevin lowered the envelope, his voice steady. "This report isn't meant to humiliate anyone. It's meant to remind everyone here that respect isn't given by popularity or by privilege. It's earned by character." Colonel Washington stood tall behind him, his expression proud, unflinching. And in that moment, the hierarchy of Lincoln High shattered completely. "This report," Kevin continued, holding the envelope firmly, "contains photographic evidence, audio recordings, and verified testimonials. All of it will be submitted to the school district and the State Department of Education." A stunned silence rippled across the field. Ashley Bennett's phone slipped from her trembling hands. Tears welled in her eyes as realization struck. Every cruel laugh, every whispered slur, every moment of mockery had been quietly documented by the boy she once dismissed. Kevin's voice grew stronger, more resolute. "In addition, I have been in contact with 17 other military families in this region whose children reported similar experiences. A federal investigation into patterns of discrimination in public schools will begin next week." A collective gasp broke through the crowd. Teachers stood frozen. Students looked at one another, their faces pale. Colonel Washington stepped forward, his voice cutting through the stunned quiet. "My son has demonstrated the same courage and integrity I expect from every soldier under my command," he said. "He faced adversity, maintained his dignity, and completed his mission with honor." Tyler Morrison could no longer hide the tears streaming down his face. His entire body shook. Every cruel joke he had told replayed in his head, but now they sounded hollow, shameful, and cowardly. The colonel placed a firm, steady hand on Kevin's shoulder. "Son," he said, his voice rich with pride, "you've shown that true character isn't defined by how easily someone surrenders to hardship, but by the grace and strength with which they rise above it." Kevin looked up at his father, eyes bright with pride and relief. And then before the silent crowd, father and son embraced at the center of the field, beneath the thundering hum of the Black Hawk's turbines. In that moment, Lincoln High witnessed a lesson no classroom would ever teach, that real heroes walk among us quietly, carrying their battles in silence, until the day comes when truth finally speaks louder than prejudice. As the helicopters lifted back into the sky, the wind swept across the field, scattering dust and silence in their wake. And while the reports made their way to the district and beyond, one question hung heavy in the air. A question that every student, every teacher, and every parent would soon have to answer. Would they finally understand the difference between power and arrogance? Or would it take the weight of accountability to teach them the true meaning of respect? 6 months after the day the world would remember as Black Hawk Landing, Lincoln High was unrecognizable. The once divided campus had transformed into a symbol of accountability and change. And at the heart of that transformation was Kevin Washington. No longer the quiet kid in an oversized uniform, but the newly elected student council president, chosen by a landslide of votes from classmates who had finally learned what true leadership looked like. The federal investigation sparked by his report revealed something far deeper than a few isolated acts of cruelty. It exposed a systemic pattern of discrimination that reached beyond Lincoln High, across 17 school districts. As a result, new diversity and respect training programs were implemented nationwide, and Lincoln High became a national model for how institutions can change when they finally face their own failures. Tyler Morrison never recovered from the fallout. The video capturing the moment he realized he had mocked the son of a decorated officer went viral. Over 5 million views in a single week. His scholarship offers disappeared overnight, and his name became synonymous with privileged arrogance. He finished high school in silence, a lonely reminder of how cruelty can cost everything. Ashley Bennett, once proud of her online popularity, saw her digital empire collapse. Every photo, every post, every attempt at a comeback was met with comments reminding her of the cruelty she had filmed for fun. No brand wanted to partner with her. Eventually, she deleted every account and transferred to another state, trying to rebuild a life far from the consequences of her choices. Cameron Davis, the class clown, learned his jokes came with a price. His mockery of soldiers and military families spread online, making him a target of outrage in a community that revered service. His own grandfather, a Vietnam War veteran, stopped speaking to him for months, ashamed of what his grandson had become. But the most important change wasn't in the students who fell, it was in the institution that rose. Kevin's report didn't just expose bullying, it uncovered a culture of silence. Administrators who ignored complaints, teachers who looked away, systems that protected image over justice. That silence was broken forever. New programs, new leadership, and a new understanding took root. Respect became more than a word painted on the gym wall. It became the foundation of Lincoln High's identity. And every year since, when new students walk past the football field, they see a small bronze plaque that reads, Black Hawk Landing, a lesson in courage, dignity, and change. Principal Peterson quietly resigned and was replaced by a Black educator with years of experience leading inclusion and equality programs. New policies were implemented to protect minority students, ensuring that no one would ever again face the kind of silence Kevin once endured. Kevin's methodical documentation, his quiet mission of truth, had done more than reform a school. It had set a legal precedent. Civil rights attorneys across the country began referencing the Washington case as a model for holding other institutions accountable. Military academies offered him full scholarships, impressed not only by his academic excellence, but by his courage, by how he had turned personal injustice into systemic change. Colonel James Washington now visited Lincoln High regularly, not as a surprise from the sky, but as a mentor and guest speaker for leadership and ethics programs. His presence served as a living reminder that real heroes don't just wear uniforms. They also raise children who inherit their strength. And those children, they walk among us quietly until tested by adversity. 6 months after that unforgettable day, following one of the colonel's lectures, Tyler Morrison stood near the stage, trembling. He waited until most students had left before walking up to Kevin. His hands shook, his eyes red from tears. "Kevin, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," he said, voice breaking, "but I need you to know, those months after everything, they were the worst of my life. Not because I lost friends or scholarships, but because I finally saw who I'd become." Kevin studied him silently. He no longer saw the arrogant bully who once ruled the hallways, only a young man humbled by the weight of his own choices. "Tyler," Kevin said gently, "my father always told me, true character isn't shown when life is easy. It's revealed when we face the consequences of our actions. You're facing yours. The question now is, what kind of man will you choose to become?" The room had gone quiet. Dozens of students who overheard stood in awe of the exchange. A moment of grace and maturity no textbook could ever teach. Kevin Washington hadn't just defeated his oppressors, he had transcended them. He had turned pain into purpose and leadership into legacy. 2 years later, Kevin graduated as valedictorian, his speech broadcast nationwide as a symbol of how young people can transform adversity into strength and humiliation into hope. As he stood on stage that day, the crowd rose in thunderous applause. Colonel Washington watched from the front row, pride shining in his eyes. And as Kevin looked out over the sea of faces, he understood something his father had always known. True victory doesn't come from revenge. It comes from rising so high that those who tried to break you are left looking up and learning. Kevin Washington's journey didn't end at Lincoln High. It was only the beginning. He was accepted into the United States Military Academy at West Point on a full scholarship, following in his father's footsteps, but carrying with him a deeper understanding of what power and privilege are truly meant for. Not to dominate others, but to protect them. Among his application letters was one that surprised everyone, written by Tyler Morrison. In it, Tyler described how Kevin had turned a moment of cruelty into a lesson in leadership, and how that transformation had inspired an entire community to grow. It was one of the few ways Tyler could begin to make amends for the pain he had caused. The lesson Lincoln High learned spread far beyond its walls. It taught people everywhere that every person carries unseen stories, unseen battles, and legacies we may never understand at first glance. That judging someone by their appearance or background isn't just morally wrong. It's strategically foolish, because you never know when that quiet kid you underestimate might be the child of someone with the power and the courage to change everything. Kevin Washington proved that the best revenge isn't destroying those who hurt you. It's building something so extraordinary that it turns injustice into inspiration. He used every cruel word, every humiliation, as fuel to build systems that would protect others from ever enduring what he had faced. 4 years earlier, he was just a teenager mocked for wearing his father's uniform. Today, he stands as a national symbol of dignity, intelligence, and moral strength. A living reminder that true leadership isn't about power. It's about purpose. Kevin's greatest victory wasn't humiliating his bullies. It was transforming them, showing them a better path, while honoring both his own resilience and his father's legacy of service. He discovered that when we confront prejudice with truth and grace, we don't just win, we lift the world a little higher.